Let's Get To presents Go Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
And it might be Labor Day, and most of you people are off. Yeah, I mean you people, but we're up. Some of us bleary-eyed. All of us probably bleary-eyed. And I woke up and I'm already in a bad mood because I've been seeing all these countdowns of closers with best walk-up songs, and it's Billy Wagner's not on any of them. And I just don't understand why Billy Wagner is such a, like every other member of the Astros, I guess, disrespected great player. That's my gear to grind this morning.
Billy Wagner had Enter Sandman as his walk-up song first, so Mariano stole it from him.
There you go. That's good to know. Andy, you have any final thoughts on this topic before we get into the real one?
No, I think the thing with Wagner is that he suffers in comparison to Mariano Rivera, as does everyone, because they were contemporaries. He also had the misfortune of playing in Houston when we don't really know how to promote our players. I mean, you still have guys arguing about Jeff Bagwell being worthy for the Hall of Fame. He's been in there for 5 years. You still have guys who will say, well, Craig Biggio only got in because he wasn't that good a player. He just hung around for 27 years, and that's why he got in the Hall of Fame. Meanwhile, you have Derek Jeter, who would not be a first ballot Hall of Famer on any other franchise outside of New York. So there certainly is a benefit if you're a player and a detriment if you're a player not in New York when it comes to that sort of greatness conversation. There's a couple of markets that if you're good in, you're automatically great, and the rest of it, you got to really overperform.
Yeah, that's a bummer. But
I'll just add in this very separate thought here. This sort of closer walk-up song has been inspired by the embrace of Mets fans of Narco this year, Edwin Diaz's walk-up song. And I'm sure you guys saw Timmy Trumpet's giving the live performance of that.
Which is so cool, by the way.
That was fantastic.
It's fantastic. I showed it to my students, and both got to enjoy it. And I know my Yankee fan students, so it's win-win. And some of the reactions on is more teams should bring in the actual people to do the walk-up songs. And I have to say this: Ryan Presley uses "God's Gonna Cut You Down" by Johnny Cash, and I'm very much in favor of bringing Johnny back in any way for that or any other performance.
I mean, yeah, if you could bring Johnny Cash in to do the song live, that'd be.
They can do it on Necromancer night. It will be so good. So good. Well, it's funny. I was in St. Paul at CHS Field this weekend and was talking to another Astros fan that I ran into randomly. And one of the things that we were talking about with this season, for as much as Astros Twitter is going up and down with every single moment, how workmanlike this team has become, how they go out and they pretty much win a baseball game and they go back. It's less. Maybe in some ways it looks like they're having less fun than they did in, say, 17 and 18 with dugout stairs and whatnot. But it does seem like all they do is roll out of bed, kick someone's rear end, and then get back on the bus. Brian, overall, how's your impression of what the season's been like so far?
Yeah, they will finish I always write something on my blog about each six of the season. They will finish their fifth six this year, and they will once again have a winning record for this six. They've won 16 games out of the 26 they played so far. And so I was surprised when I, tallied up that number last night after the game, because as you said, it sort of felt like the lows were bigger than the highs. Again, maybe that's social media and I'm on it too much. I'm definitely on it too much. But it's also the sense.
Shout out Jake Kaplan, because that's what we do.
Yeah. Wherever you are, Jake, shout out. And, but they lost this really annoying game on Saturday and came out and scored 5 runs in the second inning like it didn't even matter on Sunday, because they're a veteran team with lots of professionals who don't get affected by one loss and are quickly able to move on, and their talent shows through.
Andy,
your
rebuttal, if there is one.
It's not a rebuttal. It's just it is what it is, and I think we're a little bit jaded as fans because of the level of success that we've had as a franchise since really the 2015 season. I think that AJ Hinch said it best in 2019. They hadn't played a game that didn't matter except for a week in 2016 in a number of years. That really hasn't changed. Every game that they've played has mattered from a standing perspective, from playoff seeding perspective, and then getting into the playoffs. And we've evolved, maybe not for the better, but evolved as a fan base to, okay, we're not winning by enough. We're not winning with style points versus just, boy, we're happy to be winning. We're winning the division. Yay. I looked up the magic number today. It's under 20. And okay, maybe I'll care when it's 5. But but in 2017, I was counting it down from 30.
Yeah, I actually came across some of my old Facebook posts of like, I think I started at like 25 with an Astro that wore every number. And yeah,
I just think and I think the team is a little bit like that too. It's not that they don't care. It's just that they understand the grind that is the season. That team is a veteran team with a couple of good young pieces, but Bregman and Altuve primarily are leading the way. And this is what we do in Houston baseball right now. In this part of our baseball history, we win games. We approach the games professionally. We don't get too high. We don't get too low, because ultimately the prize that we're seeking is in October.
Well, and I know we pick on Astros Twitter a lot, Brian, in this show, and we're going to again, because it doesn't that make the Astros Twitter, like to Andy's point, there's not been a meaningless week of baseball since 2016, yet every single loss, it's like fire Dusty, bench everybody. Why haven't we DFA'd everyone? It makes it seem much more childish than I think it is or should be.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably not social media. This is probably how people reacted in their living rooms or bars in 1986. But we all remember 1986 is a great season because they won the AL West, came out of nowhere to do that. It's different this year, of course, because we expected them to win the AL West. They were the favorite walking in the season, and they have sucked all the drama out of the division by A, putting it away basically in May, and then B, not having complete and total second half collapse like the Yankees to create a race. So,
But Brian, there's a corner of Astros Twitter who's very concerned that Seattle is within 10 games now.
Good for them.
Like we're collapsing.
We're collapsing.
10-game lead now.
Yankee fans should be worried about collapsing. We'll just jump to that topic now. They won this weekend. I saw somebody, maybe it was one of our friends on Twitter. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was M. Hatter, who said, why doesn't everyone just walk Aaron Judge every single time? Because he's literally the only one doing anything. But how realistic, Andy, do you think it is that they might lose the division lead? They have, I think, 3 or 4 games left with Tampa.
I mean, it's more of a reality than it was 2 weeks ago. I still think it would take a really dramatic piece of baseball history for them to lose the division. If they win the division, they're certainly in the playoffs because they're 12 games better than whoever's in the AL Central lead right now. I think is a tie between Cleveland and Minnesota. There's no way they don't make the playoffs if they win the division. That if has now come down to 5 games. And Tampa Bay has been very quiet. People were talking about Toronto a lot. People are certainly talking about the Yankees collapse, but Tampa Bay is just steadily getting better and racking up wins. And all of a sudden you look up on September 5th and they're only 5 games back. 5 games is a big chunk to try to overcome with, I guess, 28, 29 games left. I don't have the Yankees schedule in front of me.
I'm pulling it up now.
But it's certainly something that could happen. And if you, since we've all been watching college football this weekend, if you ever go to the ESPN website and they show you the winning percentage or the what do they call it? The FPI. But basically, yeah, if we're going to predict who's going to win this game and it changes based play by play, it's closer to that line now than it was 2 weeks ago. And so, if you're a Yankees fan, you have to be concerned because they've shown no signs of life in almost 3 months now.
Well, and I'm looking at the schedule now. And so they've got 3 versus the Twins or 4 versus the Twins, which who knows how that's going to go. The Twins are, I guess, quote, fighting for their playoff live, but who knows? But then they get 3 with Tampa, 2 at Boston, 3 at the Brewers, the Pirates, the Boston again, 3 at the Blue Jays, and then a good Orioles team, and then 4 against the Rangers. So it does look like the schedule is probably going to be in their favor to not quite lose that lead unless they get swept by Tampa Bay. And then that's a whole other thing, Brian.
Yeah, and I pulled up the graph that sort of Andy's talking about, the Fangraphs has on probability to win the division. For the Yankees, it's 85.7%, which is really good. But on July 9th, it was 99.1%. So
Yeah.
are we in the 0.01 or the 0.09 on that July 1st? Maybe. But again, the Yankees are still favored. They'll get to the playoffs no matter what. I think relevant for us as Astros fans and Astros podcast, there's not much of a race to win home field throughout the playoffs. That's not a huge thing, but in 2017, it was sure helpful to have an extra home game.
Well, and we certainly will promote it next year as having the best record in the American League, and come out and buy your tickets, and we'll give you a ring or something.
I'll take it. But yeah. I guess my last question on that, and we'll start with Andy. It seems like what has happened, though, is that Aaron Boone has put himself in a win the World Series or you're fired situation after the season. I mean, they did fire Joe Girardi after getting to the ALCS and not making it. But this kind of collapse is it's just ugly.
I kind of think that Aaron Boone was probably on that notice regardless of what happened in this season, if it was World Series or bust. And I've got to think that in a real world, the Steinbrenner family, whichever version of Hank or Stan or whoever's running this team now, Brian Cashman's seat's got to be pretty warm, which I think is part of the lash out that you heard at the beginning of the season of, well, we would have won the World Series if it wasn't for the Astros cheating. And so you don't get to count our number of seasons that we didn't make it because the Astros, and that, and they won legitimately, but we would have won. So don't count it. I got to think Cashman's seat is hot. And if Cashman's seat is hot and they collapse, especially to the point of not making the playoffs or not winning the division, that I would expect that entire front office to be turned over.
Brian, you have a thought on that?
I do not, because he's been there so long, but I do think Aaron Boone's term I've heard for this is the wobbly chair. And your team collapses like this in the second half of the season, your chair is not very steady, that's for sure. He's got a lot of pressure on him in the playoffs.
Yeah, and like I said, they might be able to mask it by maybe going 500 the rest of the way, but it does seem like that anytime they run into a team with the winning record, they just don't perform.
500 would be an improvement for the Yankees right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're playing 300 ball since the All-Star break or something like that. So I want to go talk a little bit the Astros farm system as a roundabout way of bringing up a player. It's consistently ranked 29th or 30th in Major League Baseball. It has been, and I understand it. Like I get it. And I'm not even questioning the rankings, but the Astros called up another player, David Hensley, who granted 16 at-bats, which is an incredibly small sample size, but he's got an OPS of 912. He's hitting 375. And it does seem like what he was hitting in the minor leagues has translated, at least in these fair number of at-bats. Brian, just overall, what does it say about Hensley and what does it say about the farm system?
Yeah, I mean, two things here. One is small sample size, and he's got a really big BABIP right now. So, I don't expect him to keep up at this level. But, this is not a high draft pick, right? And one of the hallmarks of the Astros that they've taken,
Yeah, he's a 26th rounder. He was a 792nd pick overall.
They do not have 26 rounds anymore. They've decided it's not worth it to draft anyone at this level anymore. It's just 20 rounds. And he played well yesterday. So did Jose Urquidy, I believe, signed for $100,000, which is a couch change in the Astros front office, in any Major League Baseball team's front office, right?
I wish I had that couch.
We all do, right? But hey, it's a big profitable industry. And among the foreign-born starters, international signings on the Astros rotation, that is Christian Javier, Framber Valdez, and Luis Garcia. Urquidy's the expensive one. That's the biggest signing. And it fits with something we've seen. Jeremy Pena, right? Third-round draft pick, not a first-rounder, not a top of you can't miss on this guy. You obviously can, right? Yordan Alvarez, who they got for a reliever. It is
shout out Josh Fields.
Yeah, Astros legend. not for what he did for the Astros, but what he did, what he got us in trade. I mean, Larry Anderson was at least a good reliever.
Josh Fields also managed to lose a World Series game for them in 2017. So double thanks.
It's the trade that keeps on giving. So yes. The point is, right, one thing the Astros have done is take not from the surplus. Part of why they're ranked very poorly in the farm system rankings right now is they didn't have a first round pick for 2 seasons, right? Even if they did, it wouldn't have been sort of top level guys, big prospects you immediately put on that list once they're drafted. And instead, the player development of the Astros system continues to be outstanding. And they're able to, without having a big denominator, they're able to get huge hits on the numerator. And, something you see this in Baltimore, right? Baltimore's got a bunch of young players right now, partly because they had a lot of shots. They had a lot of dart throws. And, eventually you hit on a couple of those. What the Astros have done is they've had very few dart throws, and they've gotten star level pitchers, a star level shortstop, and the best, probably the favorite to win the AL Gold Glove this season, and maybe Aledmus Diaz's replacement next season in Hensley. We shall see.
Andy, what have you thought of Mr. Hensley's performance, and especially Jose Altuve pretending to throw his first hit away, which I found to be funny?
I mean, that's part of the initiation process of being a major league rookie. I think he's a good story. I don't know that he is, somebody who's going to be a Hall of Fame level player or an all-star level player in Houston. And this may be the height of his career this month that he's up with the Astros. But I think it says a lot to the Astros' ability to prepare a guy to jump from AAA, play in the major leagues, and be competent, especially defensively, because I think that's when you're pulling somebody up from the minor leagues in the middle of the year, it's generally not to bolster your offense, or at least it hasn't been for Houston for the past several years. It's literally, we don't have a guy to play shortstop, which feels like it comes up every year that we don't have a guy to play shortstop. We're pulling somebody else up. And I'm probably exaggerating that a little bit, but that's why Hensley's there, because Diaz got hurt. Pena was a little gimpy, although he didn't miss any time, and you've got to have another body that potentially plays there if Pena does get hurt. So Hensley was in the right place at the right time, and good for him. But I think it says more about the Astros farm system that you can get a guy that is a 26th round draft pick and put him in a position that he can be successful in a short spurt at the major league level. And a lot of it's due to David Hensley and his talent and his desire as well. You don't stop working when you get drafted, obviously. And when you're a 26th round draft pick, you don't ever get to stop working. So he continued to do that and is experiencing success. So congratulations to David, his family, whoever's sitting in the stands watching him. I'm sure Julia will be giving them an interview soon enough.
All right. So I've got one more topic to bring up before in the film business, we call, waiting for the climax. We all know what the topic we're going to discuss is. Jake Myers was optioned, I guess about a week ago. And since he's been in Sugarland, he's done nothing but hit. He went 4 for 4 the other day. I think he's got 3 home runs already. My question to you, and I'll start with Brian on this one. Does this point to his issues when he was up with the big club as being mental ones? And does that not bode as well for him as opposed to still having physical limitations?
Possibly. Short sample size, obviously, but the hitting the home runs is obviously encouraging. I would say this: if he has mental issues rather than physical issues, I think that's a better sign, because if he has physical issues at this point, 9 months since the surgery, to me, that's much more, 10 months since the surgery, that's much more worrisome than, you can figure, there are ways to help players figure out their mentality. Framber Valdez is an excellent example of that, someone who's been working with a sports psychologist and has been really effective in doing so. And we've seen the steady progress of Framber. So I don't know. We'll see. Certainly, if Jake can have a successful, I don't think he will come back up to the big leagues. If he can have a successful month, though, in Sugarland and can feel a little better about himself this off season, That would be a good thing. I think his wife is expecting too, so he could have a very sort of positive, happy off season, happier than he had last season. Maybe that bodes well for next season.
Look at Brian getting into the sort of less statistical side of things there, Andy. He's like, we're rubbing off on him a little bit.
I think they call that dumbing down.
Okay. What do you think, though, about Jake?
Jake Myers has always been a reach for this organization. He's a guy that was much older than his AAA competition before he got called up and had offensive success. Again, he had to work hard to get where he was and to even put himself in that position. But I think the reality is that baseball is littered with what we call quad A players or 4A players that hit the ball really, really well. Jose Siri is another example of that. Could destroy AAA pitching. Can't figure out major league pitching, and that's because the leap from a major league pitching, facing major league pitching and facing minor league pitching is so dramatic. It's there is no comparison in any other sport. There is the basketball in the NBA and the, what do they call it now? I was watching something else and they were talking about the CBA, and that's why it stuck in my head. But the college basketball, even, or the foreign leagues, you're really looking at, it's not that big a leap in talent.
Sure.
The college football, that everybody comes from college football, so you understand that it's not that big a leap of talent. It's faster. The talent in Major League Baseball on pitching staffs is different than anything they will ever see in the minor leagues on a sustained basis. Yeah, you might see that another guy's top prospect, but what you don't see is everybody's top prospect every day. And everybody in the major leagues in general was a top prospect at some point, whether through hype or ranking or performance. And so Jake Myers may just be another one of the long list of guys that had minor league success, but it didn't really translate to the majors. He has an American League Championship ring. He should be very proud of that. He was a contributing member of 2 major league teams in his career. He'd be very proud of that. He'll probably get another shot in spring training, but I don't have I'd be very disappointed if we broke camp with Jake Myers being the starting center fielder, because nobody could beat him out.
Well, speaking of top prospects, and you know, all of us are good Catholics. Today is the day Saint Hunter shall appear. I say that tongue planted firmly in cheek because of how he is the elixir to all the Astros problems on Twitter. And I
I'm also
understand.
going to say this: Hunter is among the least Catholic, least saint names you can possibly have. So we're definitely being sacrilegious here.
Yeah.
He's one of those new American saints. We don't.
Luckily, only one of us works for a Catholic institution, is therefore at risk. Oh, wait, that's me. No, he's, look, he's the number 1 prospect. There's been a lot of picking apart of numbers. He has great numbers at AAA, and particularly in the Pacific Coast League, which is a very offensively driven league. But we'll start with Andy and go to Brian. What should you expect? What would be a disappointment? And is he really the savior for the bullpen? Again, a bullpen that's, I think, ranked 1 or 2 in Major League Baseball. But just overall, what are you expecting? What would be a disappointment for him tonight and then the rest of the month?
I mean, just to reiterate, I have read on Astros Twitter, no less a source than that he was going to come save the season. I don't know what that means when you have a 10-game lead with 28 to play and the best record in your league. I don't know how he's going to save the season, but by gum, he's going to do it. So I guess a disappointment would be if he doesn't save the season. I don't even know how you quantify that. Hunter Brown profiles as probably a 2 with some work, maybe a 1 type starter, but a 2 probably is a good place to guess that he's going to be. And that puts him pretty competitively with a lot of our other guys in our rotation, because we have a lot of 2-3 type of guys in our rotation, and we've seen a lot of that type of performance. He's going to be a little bit frustrating to those of us that don't like long games, because my brief looking at his stats, he throws a lot of pitches and doesn't make it deep into games because of that. He doesn't give up a lot of hits and he doesn't give a lot of base runners, but he might throw 8 pitches to everybody he sees.
Yeah.
That adds up after a while. and it's not even a control issue. I don't know, and I haven't been able to watch him to know if he's just throwing balls that are easy to foul off or what that is. But that's had some people who follow the minor leagues more closely than I do profile him more as a reliever. The Astros believe he's going to be a starter. He's going to give us a spot start today, and I think he'll probably do well because he's playing the Rangers. That
It's certainly a soft landing to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That 48-year-old outfielder they have will probably hit a home run off him because he hits a home run off of everybody that we throw at him. But other than that, it should be a nice, warm welcome on a Labor Day mid-afternoon, late afternoon crowd against a team that we're going to eliminate from the playoffs this week, which is always fun. So I'm excited to see what he's going to bring. His real impact is going to be next year. I fully expect they're trying to give him an audition to get one of the bullpen spots, though, in one of the playoff rosters. So it's kind of everything's laid out in front of him, and hopefully it goes well.
Ryan, how about you? What do you thought? What do you expect out of him? And are you high on him? Are you low on him? Are you anything on him?
Hunter Brown's likely to win the PCL's Pitcher of the Year award. He I wrote this on my blog earlier this week. He leads the PCL in ERA, strikeouts, K per 9, home runs per 9, K percentage, whip, FIP, and expected FIP. Pretty good, right? His big weakness, though, is command. He walked over 10% of the batters that he's faced off against in AAA. And that's where sort of the talk of whether he's in long-term going to be a reliever or a starter comes from, is that command's always been his big issue. And while he's improved his other stuff, his command numbers, his walk numbers, still are bigger than you like. I'm not sure. I guess if he got pulled in the second inning, it would be a disappointment. But I don't have huge expectations for him today. I think he's here to get his feet wet and get the proverbial cup of coffee.
5 innings or so, probably.
Yeah. Will he make the playoff roster? Well, I made this point before here. There aren't a lot of spots available on in the pitching staff on the playoffs. So my guess right now is he's on the outside looking into the playoff roster. He's battling with guys like Seth Martinez and Luis Garcia for a spot on the playoff roster. I would love for him to be on the playoff roster because that means he pitches really well this September. And for the most part, that would be a good sign for next season. My expectations today are modest. 5 innings, 3 runs, I think would be something like that. Hopefully he keeps his walks under control and enjoys his first major league strikeout.
Well, we just got some breaking news across the wire. And by wire, I mean Twitter. Because of this is from Brian McTaggart, because of a scoring change in the 11th inning Saturday, Kyle Tucker was awarded a stolen base instead of defensive indifference. As a result, he now has 20 stolen bases and the first Astros player to reach 20 stolen bases and 20 home runs in his season since Altuve in 2017, which is kind of cool because this was a goal of his. Like he's very proud of his base running. And so it leads to the question of, are we going to be playing the Carlos Correa game with Kyle Tucker in a few years, or do you think there's a chance that we're going to extend or re-sign him, Brian?
I mean, they haven't re-signed him yet, so as long as they don't re-sign him, he is to use the term I think they use in the NBA, he is a flight risk. That's still several years. I think that's 3 years into the future here. So, but we can worry about that. We can worry about that in March when it gets to extension season.
Andrew?
First of all, we're all men of a certain age. Remember when an outfielder would come up and get 20 steals and you'd think that was a disappointing season?
I know.
Well, he only had 20. He only got caught, he only attempted 24 steals. What's that about?
Like, wasn't Bagwell one year like a 40-40 guy or something? Like
he's 30-30. He's close.
30-30.
But outside of those handful of people, a bunch of those outfielders were, guys who would get, well, like Gary Pettis, who's now the Astros third base coach, who would hit 5 and have a 290 on base percentage. So his times of getting to first base were very precious. So he stole second every time.
I don't need you interrupting my old man fantasies about how things used to be better.
Yeah.
No, I think it's Tucker doesn't seem to me, and I've talked to some people who were scouts, and Tucker isn't a big clubhouse guy. He gets along well with everybody fine, but he doesn't get close to people. And that's, if you're just going to pick somebody based on, how they seem to interact with their teammates and everything else, I think he's absolutely going to try for test free agency. I think, when your walk-up song is give me cash, or contains the lyric, give me cash, pay me cash, it's pretty obvious where he's headed. And I think that's okay. I don't think Tucker's an irreplaceable talent. He's certainly very good. I certainly would have a problem with the Astros extending him. But if you're going to make me choose between Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker, and I'm kind of wondering if they stuck extensions out for both players and Alvarez bit first, that's the direction they're going to go. Players are going to come and go. He could also become a World Series hero this year and win Game 7 with a dramatic grand slam. And he's going to become my favorite player. So I'm very fickle, and I'm okay with being fickle. But we've got 3 more years of Kyle Tucker before we need to really be worried about this. I don't expect him to sign an extension unless the Astros just blow him away.
Yeah, so I think we got 3 or 4 years left with him, and at that point, that's a whole different animal. All right, guys. Well, I think it's been a very good week. I think the one thing that we'll be looking at as we get closer to the end is how the Astros play that last week of the season, knowing they're going to have 5 days off. And so that's going to be very interesting when we start to wrestle with, is rest better than reps? Are we worried about the team being rusty? And all that fun stuff is what we'll deal with once the division is clinched, which will be soon-ish. Until then, good luck to Hunter Brown and Go Astros.
It's my sister's birthday. Happy birthday to my sister, and Go Astros.
Looking forward to finding out what Brown's going to do for us. Go Astros.
Go Astros is a presentation from Twitchy Dolphin Media and part of the Let's Get To Baseball Network.